The President. Mr. Dennis Kwok, with regard to your request to discuss the issue that foreign judges would not be empowered to preside at trials involving national security, I don't think it's as urgent as that one would warrant to discuss it right now at this council meeting. That's why I rule that the motion moved by Mr. Dennis Kwok is not in line with Rule 16.2 of the Rules of Procedure. Yes, Mr. Ray Chan, in accordance with Rule 16, bracket 2, I'd like to move a motion to adjourn this meeting so that on the 27th to the 28th of May, that's today and tomorrow, the police in Admiralty have made certain deployment, and that would also affect the traffic in the area. Some 3,000 police officers have been deployed, and also barriers have been set up. And as a result of that, that has caused a lot of inconvenience to both motorists and also members of the public, and dozens of people have been arrested, and the number is increasing. And therefore, we'd like to discuss this right away, so that we'd like to discuss the deployment strategy by the police so that they can adjust it, or else a large number of members of the public would be affected. And as a result, there would be conflicts between the police and the public, and that would also be irreversible. I rule that your motion is also not in line with Rule 16.2, and therefore I do not approve your motion as President of this Council in accordance with Article 72(1) of the Basic Law in presiding over meetings. I have the responsibility to ensure that this Council will conduct its meetings in an orderly manner, so that within reasonable time frame we'll be able to deal with the business on the agenda. And as you have understood, I've already set aside some 30 hours for dealing with the resumption of debate for the National Anthem Bill. That's why I'd like to proceed to the debate on this as soon as possible. Mr. Martin Liang.
Mr. Martin Liang. Mr. President, as the Chairman of the Bills Committee on the National Anthem Bill, I'll report on the salient points of our deliberation. The purpose of the National Anthem Bill. Mr. Ray Chan asks for a quorum call. I have already said. Dr. Helena Wong, order please. If not, I have already said that I'm not going to proceed with any Rule 16.2 request. That's in accordance with Basic Law Article 72, bracket 1. Mr. Andrew Wen, order please. Mr. Andrew Wen, if you continue to shout from your seat, I would regard it as conduct that's grossly disorderly. Mr. Andrew Wen, please take your seat. This is my final warning. Mr. Martin Yeo. The purpose of the National Anthem Bill is to provide for the singing and playing of the national anthem, protection and promotion of the national anthem in Hong Kong. The Bills Committee held 17 meetings and received views from the public. The deliberation of the BC is detailed. Mr. Martin Yeo, just a moment, please. I think there is a placard. I think last week I said that anything that insults legislative members would not be allowed to be kept there. I will order members to leave if the placard remains the white one. Yes, thank you. The deliberation of the Bills Committee is detailed in the report of the Bills Committee. I will speak on the main provisions of the bill. First of all, the preamble. Some members of the view that expressions like to enhance citizen awareness of the People's Republic of China and to promote patriotism in paragraph 3 of the preamble are vague and have given rise to concern about whether the bill is to force people to be patriotic. They have pointed out that the meaning of the term patriotism is vague and open to different interpretation. The administration explained that for such terms, like to enhance citizen awareness of People's Republic of China and to promote patriotism, should be interpreted by their ordinary meaning. Patriotism is a general term and has no specific meaning in the context of the bill. The administration has explained that a preamble only serves to promote or to provide a context to facilitate the interpretation of the legislation concerned. The administration has confirmed that the preamble does not impose any legal liability. Part 1 of the bill, preliminary, members noted that Clause 2 of the bill contains a definition of national anthem. It also elaborates on the reference to lyrics and scores of the national anthem, as well as the meaning in relation to references to playing and singing of the national anthem. For Part 2, playing and singing the national anthem, it refers to the standards and etiquettes to be observed in relation to the playing and singing of the national anthem and occasions on which the national anthem must be played and sung. Some members of the view that the scope of Clause 4 is too wide, that is, the etiquette to be followed by people attending or taking part in occasions on which the national anthem must be played and sung. Some members are of the view that it is unnecessary and should be deleted so as to avoid any uncertainty as a result of failure to observe the relevant etiquette. The administration has explained that Clause 4 of the bill reflects the content of Article 7 of Law of the People's Republic of China on the national anthem, that is, National Anthem Law, and it provides guidance so as to tell people the etiquette to be observed when attending or taking part in occasions that the national anthem has to be played or sung, and it is only directional and doesn't carry any penalty. Members also noted that Clause 5 specifies the occasions that the national anthem should be played and sung, including the oath-taking ceremonies for members of legislature when they assume office. Part 3, protection of the national anthem, covering Clauses 6 to 8, which prohibit the misuse of the national anthem, its lyrics or scores, as well as the act of publicly and intentionally insulting the national anthem. Well, Clause 3 also provides for the penalties for such behavior. As to the offense of insulting the national anthem, some members of the view that the definition of insult in Clause 7 is vague, and they wonder what criteria will be adopted by the administration to decide whether an act constitutes an insult to the national anthem. The administration has explained that the bill defines insult as in relation to the national anthem means to undermine the dignity of the national anthem as a symbol and sign of the PRC. The administration is of the view that such a definition already provides certainty and a clear basis for a court in adjudicating cases. The administration has emphasized that when the prosecution is to prove that an act constitutes an offense under Clause 7 of the bill, the prosecution must prove that the conduct constitutes an insulting act and there is an intention to insult the national anthem and performs such an act properly and intentionally before prosecution can be instigated. In addition, some members of the view that the penalty levels are excessive. The administration has said that the relevant clause stipulates a fine at level 5 and imprisonment of 3 years, but then that's the maximum penalty levels. The court will take into account the actual circumstances before deciding on whether the penalties should be imposed and what and how and at which level. And this is in line with the penalties set out in the National Flag and National Emblem Ordinance. Part 4 of the bill, promotion of the national anthem, clauses 9 to 10. Clause 9 stipulates that the Secretary for Education should issue directions to include the national anthem in the primary and secondary education. Members are concerned whether such directions are mandatory and the impact on the teaching autonomy in primary and secondary schools. Members are of the view that they are worried that when teachers are to execute the directions, they are under undue pressure, and members are worried as to what should be done. Should there be improper conduct on the part of students on the campuses, like disrespecting the national anthem? The administration has explained that Clause 9 aims to reflect the requirement in Article 11 of the National Anthem Law, while taking into account the actual circumstances of Hong Kong. The administration said that for Clause 9, this is a matter of imposing a legal responsibility on the Secretary for Education, so that he has to issue directions in relation to the inclusion of the national anthem in primary and secondary school education. And the purpose is to implement Clause 9(1)(a) and (b) of the bill, that is to teach students to learn to sing the national anthem, and that they should learn about the history and the spirit of the national anthem and the etiquette to be observed. The administration has said that as to how to teach the students to respect the national anthem is a matter of teaching and learning. It falls entirely under the professional duties of the teachers, and the EDB is not going to prescribe the teaching and learning materials. As to the improper behavior on the campus, the administration has said that it should be left to the school and the teachers for their professional judgment, and such matters should be dealt with in such a way that the purpose of education is served. In addition, the members noted that Clause 10 provides a legal basis so that the national anthem will be included into the APIs. In other words, licensees of domestic free and paid TV as well as sound broadcasting should, in accordance with the licensing terms and conditions, broadcast the APIs, including the national anthem. In addition, the Communications Authority must issue directions to the licensees to provide for the following. That is, the license holders must, by way of the APIs, broadcast the national anthem on days stipulated by the chief executive. Some members doubt, since we have already got a mechanism for local or domestic TV and sound broadcasters to play the national anthem in relation to the arrangements. They are of the view that it is not necessary to have Clause 10, and they are against the provision to empower the CE to stipulate days on which the APIs should be broadcast to play the national anthem. But the administration is of the view that the arrangements are appropriate, and we have already taken into account the arrangements under the National Flag and National Emblem Ordinance. Mr. President, the Bills Committee and the administration do not intend to move any amendments. As to members' amendments, I will leave it to them to explain. Mr. President, I have spoken on behalf of the Bills Committee in relation to the deliberation. I now come to my personal views. Mr. President, the national anthem has been established by the Constitution as a symbol and sign of the country. The Hong Kong Administrative Region is part of the People's Republic of China. It is right for us to respect the national anthem. On the 4th of November 2017, the National People's Congress Standing Committee adopted the decision to add the national anthem law to Annex 3 to the Basic Law. According to Article 18, of the Basic Law, the national laws listed in Annex 3 to the Basic Law shall be applied locally by way of promulgation or legislation by the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. So Hong Kong has a constitutional duty to implement the national anthem law. In order to take into account our common law system and the actual circumstances, the administration has decided to legislate domestically so as to implement the national anthem law. In the course of local legislation, the House Committee has authorized the setting up of a Bills Committee on the bill. Altogether, 17 meetings were held, and we have had 50 hours of detailed deliberation, including a public hearing. On the 14th of June last year, the Bills Committee submitted a report to the Council, or rather to the House Committee. But then as a result of the turmoil concerning the amendment bill exercise and as a result of the shutdown of the House Committee during the current session, the work has been deferred. We can only resume the second reading debate today. Mr. President, the purpose of the bill is to respect the national anthem, and it is providing for the penalties for publicly and intentionally insulting the national anthem or the misuse of the national anthem. In fact, generally speaking, the controversy is not great. But then in the society, there are certain doubts and comments, and it shows that their views contain misunderstanding, and the understanding is incorrect. Some people think that it is going to restrict our freedom of speech, and it is an attempt to brainwash, saying that it is an evil law. I think the inadequacies and the misunderstanding has created fear, and fear is most vulnerable. I think we need to make sure that people understand it better. Most of the worries and the issues have been taken up during the Bills Committee's deliberation, and they have been addressed. Say, for example, for the occasions on which the national anthem is played and sung, if you are in a local cafe or a Chinese restaurant, when the television broadcasts the national anthem, the customers do not have to observe the etiquette because they are not taking part in or attending the occasions. So even if there is a breach of the etiquette on the occasions that the national anthem is sung and played, there's no penalty. It's only when it is publicly and intentionally insulting the national anthem, then such acts will attract a criminal liability, and you have to get both the actus rea and the mens rea. And whether it is going to attract a criminal liability, it would depend on the actual circumstances and the facts. For our legal system, there is an onus of proof, and also the standard of proof is high, and it has to be proved beyond reasonable doubt. On occasion that the national anthem is publicly sung and played, if there are mistakes like singing out of tune or in other playing it in other forms, well, I think the prosecution must prove that the act is intentional insult, and it is being intentionally and publicly made. Otherwise, it would not be an inadvertent breach of the law. Mr. President, Article 27 of Basic Law provides for the protection of our citizens' freedom of speech, but then the freedom is not absolute. It can be restricted. According to the ruling of the Court of Final Appeal, restricting insult is restricting one mode of expression only, and there are other modes that can be permitted. So the restriction is limited and reasonable. There's no breach against the safeguards. Now, the focus of the controversy is on the oath-taking ceremonies of lawmakers, and they have to play and sing the national anthem. Some people have malicious intention, and they are magnifying the fee, saying that by such a way the members can be disqualified arbitrarily. This is unsubstantiated. It's a false proposition. Well, for someone to stand for the election and to take the oath upon assumption of office, according to the law, they have to declare that they uphold the basic law and pledge allegiance to the Hong Kong SAR of the PRC. Well, given such a premises, they should respect the national anthem as a symbol of the country and attend the session of the oath-taking ceremony involving the singing and playing of the national anthem. If you are not good in speaking Putonghua, then you can only sing in Cantonese, but there's no intention to insult the national anthem. That's not against the law. But if you are not conversant in Putonghua, I think it's time for you to brush it up. Well, it is right for us to respect the national anthem. For us to have this debate, well, we have to be rational. I don't think we should have it politicized. I don't think we should have the strikes, and we shouldn't allow the besieging of the LegCo, stopping members from attending the meeting. Otherwise, we cannot exercise the functions under Basic Law Article 73(1), that is to enact, amend, and repeal laws. I support the resumption of the second reading debate of the National Anthem Bill so as to complete our constitutional duty to have local legislation for the National Anthem law. Thank you.
多謝主席。
Mr. Tong Li Chair, thank you, President. I speak in support of the resumption of debate of the National Anthem Bill. For national flag, national emblem, and even national anthem, they are all symbols of a sovereign state in all countries around the world, including many countries that emphasize human rights and also freedoms and democracy. These Western democracies all have laws to protect their national flags, national anthem, and emblem. And for any insulting acts on these symbols would also be criminal. So such practice is not like the mutual destruction camp say that, well, that would affect our human rights, and it would also force people to love the country and also to support any political powers and so on. The purpose of this is to protect the dignity of a country. In fact, the People's Republic of China's national anthem, that is the March of the Volunteers, originally it first featured in an anti-Japanese film, and the purpose is to protect our country and to protect our race so that we would not be subject to any attack by a foreign race. So it has nothing to do with any political affiliation or thoughts, and therefore any Chinese should respect our national anthem, and we should all protect it. Well, in Hong Kong and on the mainland, they have already got laws to protect national flags and national emblems. But then for the national anthem, in the past, we only had administrative procedures to regulate such acts. And in Hong Kong, we have no law whatsoever on this. But then for Hong Kong people, most of them respect the national anthem. And on public occasions, whenever national anthem is played and sung, even without any law to regulate it, most people present would stand up in salute, and some people would also voluntarily sing the national anthem. That is a respect for our sovereign state, and that is also a respect for our nationals. Up until early 2015, for those who advocate, because of the influence of the Occupy Central movement, well, in a soccer match between Hong Kong team and an overseas team. That was the first time when there were such insulting acts, and on similar occasions subsequently, people would also boo the national anthem, and many of them would be young people, and sometimes they would just boo the national anthem, and at the same time they would also display Hong Kong independence symbols and banners and so on, and that would seriously undermine the dignity of our national anthem. And on the 1st of September 2017, the NPCSC enacted nationwide legislation, and the national anthem law was passed. Yes, there was no specific mention that it was targeting the acts of insulting the national anthem in enacting this law, but then I think basically that was also one of the basic considerations. And then in November the same year, the NPCSC, in accordance with Article 18.2 of the Basic Law, included that in Annex 3 to the Basic Law, so that it would be implemented in Hong Kong. And then Hong Kong SAR would be required to enact domestic legislation in order to execute this duty of implementing a nationwide law. That's the background to this. I believe that had there been nobody who advocated the distorted view of insulting the national anthem, in particular, had we not had the incidents of young people insulting the national anthem, or even acts of segregating ourselves from our sovereign state, we would not have this law. Similarly, during the past 6 months or so, people have blatantly beautified or glorified acts of acting against our sovereign state, and they would also take acts, and had there not been people visiting overseas countries to invite them to interfere with Hong Kong's affairs, they even beg foreign powers to impose sanctions on us and our country, and they have blatantly ignored the country's interests and our interests. The NPCSC would not have had the need to introduce national security law in Hong Kong. Now, coming back to the second reading debate, that is the National Anthem Bill, is very simple and short. If you look at the Chinese version, there were only 23 pages, including some 14 provisions and 3 annexes, and 3 provisions are only corresponding amendments with regard to existing legislation. In other words, that's to reflect the provisions under the National Anthem law, so that can be translated into the common law language in the laws of Hong Kong. Well, with regard to the lyrics and also the score of the National Anthem, and also how it should be played and sung, and also the occasion on which it should be sung and played, and also the etiquette and so on and so forth. So these would be provided for under the bill. Clause 4 of the bill provides that when it's played and sung, for people attending the occasion, they will have to stand up in salute, and they would also have to act with dignity, and they would have to deport themselves with dignity. So even without the law, in fact, most Hong Kong people, including foreign local residents, so where they are present at occasions where the national anthem is played and sung, they would also stand solemnly, and they would also deport themselves with dignity. Or some question if they are old, and if they are wheelchair bound, or if they do not understand Chinese, if they do not know how to sing, and if they cannot speak Mandarin, and if they just sing out of tune with the song or with the national anthem, would that constitute an offense, or would that be taken to be disrespectful and so on, and would they be punished? In fact, on many occasions, the administration has already clarified that the way it is drafted, it is very clear in the law that so long as it's not an intentional disrespectful act, so even if you're not able to deport yourself with full compliance with the requirements, that would not constitute an offense. On the contrary, if it's an intentional act to insult the national anthem, for example, if you boo it on a public occasion, and if you bring flags of Hong Kong independence and so on, and if you just wave the flag while you sing, then that would also constitute a criminal offense, and once you're convicted, you can be sentenced to up to 3 years of imprisonment. And some question whether or not this would also restrict people's right or freedom of expression. In fact, it's just about a one way of expression. So if you're not happy with the administration or not happy with the Chinese Communist Party, you can express that very freely. For example, through peaceful rallies, you can write articles, you can also post posts on your Facebook page, or even write a song to tease the administration. But then you should not insult the national anthem in insulting the country. And also on the misuse of the national anthem, this would also constitute an offense. For example, using it in a private funeral party or in commercial advertisements and so on. Well, that would not affect the daily life of the general public, and the penalty would be a fine. Clause 9 provides that the national anthem should be incorporated in the primary and secondary school education. I believe that that is very important. In particular, well, we have already got the problem in relation to the DSE examination in history, and with experts in the examination authority, still we have this question as to how secondary school students would view the invasion by Japan on China, and they were asked if there were more benefits than disadvantages, and yet some 40% of students answered that yes, there were more benefits than harm. And Mr. Ip Kin Yin, representing the education sector, said that there was nothing wrong with this question. It shows that the education sector and the education system have indeed got very serious problems, and therefore I hope that through the education of this national anthem, which was originally an anti-Japanese song during the Japanese resistance war, more people will have a better understanding and correct understanding of the history. Well, as a Chinese national, I cannot come up with a reason why we should not support a bill that would uphold the dignity of our country, and we should also protect the national anthem, which is a symbol of our country, and on top of that, that would not affect the people's daily life at all. We do not have to change our habits. We will not be breaching or contravening the provisions under the law, and therefore for the mutual destruction camp, they are actually making every attempt to block the passage of this bill. For example, they would call upon people to surround this complex, and they've also wasted some 7 months of the session by blocking the election of the chairman of the House Committee. So they have ulterior motive, or is it that they have taken instructions from others? Well, if you look at some background information, some of them actually said that they would be prepared to support it in principle. It's only that they had some questions about the details. For example, for the offense of insulting the national anthem, and the imprisonment term could be up to 3 years, and they said that it might be too heavy. But then, by the time when the bill was gazetted, when they saw that the bill provides that, well, in the oath-taking ceremony by this council, they would also have to sing the national anthem, and then they changed their attitude, and they said that they would be against it. In fact, it has already been provided that lawmakers will have to swear their allegiance to the PRC, the People's Republic of China, and also the Hong Kong SAR, and also they would have to uphold the basic law before they can take office. So how come they would think that, well, the playing and singing of the national anthem on these occasions would be a problem? Well, it shows that they do not respect their own country. They think that they are foreigners, or they are willing to become the puppets of overseas or foreign influences, or even become traitors. But they might have thought that when they hear the national anthems of the US or the UK, they would rather see this instead of their own country's national anthem. I hope that these are not facts. Even if they are not Chinese nationals, they should not just be opposing it for opposition's sake. In fact, since the reunification, every year when we have the opening of the legal year of the legal year, that would also be sung and played, and many foreign lawyers and barristers, they would not find it a problem. So when the national anthem is played and sung, they would naturally stand up solemnly and deport themselves with dignity. Well, in fact, in the dictionary of some of the mutual destruction camp, they have never got the word respect, and there is no question of any country or race's concept. So these are my remarks. Ms. Tanya Chan.
Mr. President, having listened to Mr. Tony Chair's speech, he was sort of trying to guess what motives others have, and he even talked about traitors. That's horrible. Now, he saw an act and then he would try to guess the motives behind such an act. That's what we are worried about. You get incriminated for your words. Now, we've been promised that it is fine, it's just for the minority that don't show respect. Now, today, we are told that there is a red line here. Tomorrow, there will be another red line there. At first, we were told what's expected of us at the oath-taking ceremony. Now, there is an interpretation of the basic law. They are reinterpreting the oath-taking ordinance. That's what worries us. Well, we want to uphold the principle of predictability in our common law system. So the certainty has been lost. This is very worrying. Well, for the national anthem law, mens rea is most worrying. You look at the circumstantial evidence, but how far would you go back? We can see this from the DQ case. A returning officer will disqualify a candidate on certain evidence. So everything has been exaggerated. And we were surprised by something that didn't and shouldn't have retrospective effect. And that's why we are so concerned and so worried about the national security law. Just now, Mr. Anthony Chair told us about what happened in Beijing. He was sort of saying that served you right, you have been delaying it, and so you asked for it. Why is it wrong for us to be worried? Well, for the National Anthem Bill, I have listed out all the grounds for our worry. We are worried because the Hong Kong government doesn't know anything about the national security law as well. Well, I think capital flight has happened and the stock market has plunged. Now, all out of a sudden, a decision was made up there. We don't know what will be covered. I have with me the content. I'm speaking on the National Anthem Bill. Back then, for the National Anthem Bill, in the past, when Beijing told us that Hong Kong had to legislate for the National Anthem law, at least it's a matter of local legislation. And the common law principles were taken into account. But of course, I found a problem there as well. I'll elaborate on that later on. Now, as you have said, Mr. President, it's a two-step approach. First, the NPCSC made a decision, and then the NPCSC is being authorized. So it is like an equation. It's 1 plus 1. And then it seems that we were given 2 years' time to pass the National Anthem Bill. And therefore, on this occasion, for national security, they're not going to do the same. Will there be elements of the common law? Well, even when I read the National Anthem Bill, I just doubt if we have been upholding the common law elements. Now, let's try to compare the National Anthem Bill with the National Flag and National Emblem Ordinance, which was passed by the Provisional Legislature. When you look at the Flag and Emblem Ordinance, it hasn't got the preamble. What is there in the preamble in this bill? Of course, we're supposed to know more about the context. Now we have got this guidance. I don't know whether the information has been scrapped or not. This about a document issued by the drafters of the Department of Justice for the purpose of drafting laws. I think it was under the leadership of Mr. Wang Yanlong. I doubt if anybody can still remember him or even Rim Sti-yun, but his name has cropped up again. Well, it says here, preambles are seldomly used. If there is a need to explain the background, then you just go straight to the explanation. So the use of preamble would be appropriate for special circumstances to explain the background. Well, Mr. President, we're really worried about the National Anthem Bill because for the National Anthem law of the PRC, we understand that a lot of elements of ideology can be found in the National Anthem law. So when you look at our common law system, if you look at the capitalist system, which will be there for 50 years, and of course our lifestyles have been promised to be allowed to continue for another 50 years. So we can see that the two models are very different. Here we have got something like the preamble to deal with the problem. We have the basic law. We don't practice socialism. So some words have been taken out. Now, for the preamble, there are 3 paragraphs. At the time, the administration told us that it provides a context or a background. But then this part is absent from the National Flag and National Emblem Ordinance. Preamble, whereas the national anthem of the People's Republic of China is a symbol and sign of the People's Republic of China. Second, we need to respect the national anthem, preserve the dignity, etc. Why we get it here but not in the National Flag and National Emblem Ordinance? Now, probably in most cases, we don't care about the preamble. We just skip it when we read an ordinance. But in fact, it is important, Mr. President. You need to read the full text of a bill or an ordinance. We have to be careful about the legislative intention. Just now, I had to read up what Mr. Huang Chen said in relation to the draft decision. I read it many times, though not 10 times. I went through the 10-page document many times. Now, of course, I have to go back to the case of the national security law. Now, it is said that it is going to be a 2-step approach. So a decision will be made, and tomorrow we know the outcome. No one dares to vote against it. You will just jump to clap your hands to give it an applause. According to Huang Chen, if you look at point 4, it says that if necessary, in Hong Kong, they can set up their own agencies to implement the national security law. He had not planned a pause, but then there was a loud round of applause that he had to pause to let others finish clapping their hands. So they couldn't wait to applaud. Now, the mainland agencies will be set up in Hong Kong for the sake of national security. That's exactly what we are worried about. And that leads on to another point. Just now, Tony Chair said that only one mode of expression is being restricted. But then there would be a second, a third, a fourth. Yes, we've been told that we can continue to criticize the Central People's Government. We can continue to protest. Well, maybe you are allowed to do so at this moment. But maybe by 3 p.m., if you try to criticize the CPG, you may be accused of inciting others to criticize the CPG. let me go back to Wang Chen's article or his statement. Well, it is said that there are people inciting the Hong Kongers to oppose China, to oppose Hong Kong. Well, we're worried about the possibility of retrospective effect. That's alarming. And then the educational sector, right at the beginning, told us about their concerns. Well, in the bill, we have got a provision to make it clear that we need to carry out education in relation to the national anthem. Same will be needed for national security. Now the government is saying that no need to worry because it doesn't carry a penalty. But then a school has to process a large number of issues. It doesn't carry a penalty, but then there's even worse because you don't know what to do. It's better if you come up with greater clarity. Now, say for example, for the history exam, whether it is doing more good than harm or the other way around, I think you need to watch your drafting, you need to watch your word. About 30% of the candidates in the form of a random checking gave the answer that they thought that Japan did more good than harm. I think it was 57.1% of the candidates who said that it did more harm than good. But still, it is not acceptable. Now, Mr. Tony Chair has said that we had the war against Japanese aggression, and therefore we have got this national anthem. What about the songwriter of the national anthem? Well, in fact, Tian Han was labeled as someone who opposed the regime. Do you know what happened to him at the end of the day? Well, maybe that would be left out altogether for national anthem education. Why can't we continue to tell people about it? Maybe in the future it would be scrapped because we have to find out whether it is for our good and for our harm. If you ask such a question, if you include such an element in your exam question, maybe you will be fired. That's what's happening in Hong Kong. For the past month or two, one after another, a lot happened. The two officers issued statements. Today, I looked up the information, like the articles issued on the National Security Education Day. Mr. Luo Huilin gave some opening remarks on the National Security Education Day. He said that we have to provide a facilitating environment. He said that we had to do 4 things. I did pay attention to what he asked for, but never had I imagined that today Hong Kong has changed so much. He said that whatever has to be set up should be set up. Whatever has to be changed has to be changed. Whatever that has to be activated, whatever that has to be implemented must be activated and implemented. Hong Kong should never be allowed to become a loophole in the landscape of national security. Maybe National Anthem Bill is a litmus paper. Of course, they might not have anticipated the turmoil arising from the Amendment Bill exercise. But in fact, we started to become fearful with the onset of the National Anthem Bill exercise. Not that people intended to break the law, but they had been very objective. They were worried as to how the bill might have been abused, and they weren't too sure as to who and how they would be affected. Now, for the executive that we have got here, they would make full use of the legal tools, and they would go to the extreme. So we're worried that we're giving another legislative tool to the administration. They don't use the laws to protect the rights and freedoms of the people of Hong Kong. They try to game the system. Now, we had the prohibition on face covering under the emergency regulation ordinance. Now we are afraid that they are just getting another tool to erode the rights and freedoms of the people. Now for the National Anthem Bill, will our freedom of speech, freedom of expression be subject to further restriction, or even the freedom of the press? Or maybe we cannot report on what happened. We cannot even broadcast any footage. Maybe it isn't happening now, but what will happen once the National Anthem Bill has been passed? Will there be a retrospective effect? Who will arrest you? Are you going to stand trial in Hong Kong or on the mainland? Will it be mainland law enforcement agencies making arrests in Hong Kong and taking you back to the mainland for a trial? We are concerned. The fear is huge. In Hong Kong, we are undergoing a major change in one country, two systems. We have to stand firm, Hong Kongers.
Dr. K.K. Kwok. Mr. President, today we are debating on the National Anthem Bill. First of all, we need to consider why we need this National Anthem Law or National Anthem Bill. Many countries have laws relating to their national anthems, and the People's Republic of China is no exception. But is this a tool to penalize their citizens? The answer, of course, is no. In Australia, UK, in Taiwan, etc., there is no national anthem laws. In Taiwan, at one point, financial penalties will be meted out for those who did not stand up when the national anthem was sung. In other democratically elected governments and countries, they do not have national anthem laws for the simple reason that when all citizens of that place have genuine respect for the national anthem or the government, there is no need to meter out any penalty. Very often, we talk about the Confucius culture, and this is extensively promoted to other countries. We know that we have the Institute of Confucius in other countries as well. Some of them have ceased operation. In fact, before we talk about the Confucius, I need to quote from Mengzi. He says that you need to convince people not by force, but by reason. Let's say in Hong Kong, when people have genuine respect for the national anthem once it is played, isn't it very good? And in fact, this is not difficult to achieve that. If we truly have one country, two systems, high degree of autonomy, Hong Kong people administrating Hong Kong as enshrined in the basic law, if we have genuine democracy in Hong Kong, so that we can have one person, one vote for the chief executive election and legislative election. When Hong Kong people feel that we have genuine democracy in Hong Kong, when we know for sure that human rights international treaties are respected in Hong Kong, there is no need to have the national anthem law in Hong Kong. In fact, in other countries, governments have considered whether there are alternatives to promoting respect for the national anthem instead of metering out penalties. Like Mr. Mengzi said, if a country leader knows to convince people by reason, not by force, there will be peace. Just like the pro-establishment camp always advocates, there needs to be calm and peace in society, and that we need to be law-abiding, we need to respect the government. In fact, it has always been the teaching in classical Chinese, like Mr. Mengzi said, for thousands of years. If you could treat everyone as a family member, if you could treat every human being equally, then things would be much easier. On the other hand, how is the government treating our people? Take this as an example. The government has reluctantly withdrawn the extradition bill, but in the first place, had the government truly heeded the views of the people, and had the government understood that this bill would not bring peace to our society, but rather fear among investors, and that they might pull away capital from Hong Kong, they would not have tried to bulldoze the bill through the council, leading to so many conflicts between the police and the people. In the same vein, for the National Anthem Bill, be it the Central People's Government or the Hong Kong SAR government, as long as people feel that these governments respect one country, two systems, then our citizens may be very satisfied. They may enjoy even singing the national anthem. And hence there is no need to enact a piece of legislation to categorically specify an offense of insulting the national anthem. But what happens now is that the one country, two systems principle, high degree of autonomy, etc., have been eroded. And also the Beijing government is skipping a step without consulting Hong Kong. It is pushing forward the national security law. And I think using the spirit of Mencius, it doesn't work. In other words, the maximum penalty for national anthem-related offences is 3 years imprisonment and $50,000. In fact, there is only one objective you want to achieve, that is for people in Hong Kong to respect the national anthem. And yet such heavy penalty is proposed. Comparing to other countries, well, just now, Mr. John Lee, Secretary for Security, simply wagged his tongue in answering members' question on national security laws. He said that in other countries such as UK, Australia, so on and so forth, they have similar national security laws. Then let's compare this with national anthem laws as well. In these places, the national anthem laws don't come with penalty because their governments are democratically elected. People have respect to uphold this government, uphold the authority, because the government is elected by its people. That is the most important spirit. Even in the Warring States era, thousands of years ago, Mencius already promoted this concept. Why is it that in the 21st century, there is still a need to meter out heavy punishments to achieve peace? We are absolutely outnumbered and outpowered by the 1.4 billion population in the PRC. We have only 7 million people in Hong Kong. And if you think carefully about it, there is no need to use heavy punishment. We have armed police officers just outside. In fact, some police brutality happened again in Central during lunch. Pepper sprays, salt rounds, and anti-riot shots were made. And if you want genuine respect from the people, there is no need to summons the riot police in the green uniform to come. Our country respects traditional culture. And long before there was teaching on how to rule a country. Well, take Hong Kong people as an example. If they are subjects to be ruled, to have control over, then at the outset you're being very combative. Take a family, take a classroom as an example. A good teacher doesn't need to exercise physical punishment. A good teacher knows how to coach students. Same as a family. Whereas in a country, we have those in power, we have a lot of things. Those in power have money, they have weapons, they have the army. There is no way to stop the introduction of national security laws with 1.4 billion people on this land. And they can also set up agencies for the national security organs to enforce the law in Hong Kong. So they are trying to rule Hong Kong by oppression. If we have a law-abiding government, if we have a government that truly cares for its people, why do we need heavy punishments? Why do we need tools of oppression to earn respect? Isn't it something wrong with the institution, with the system, with the government? We should sing the national anthem with sincerity and joy. And yet, it is now shown that not many people have respect for the national anthem. And if I were the CPG, I would strive to find out why people dislike the national anthem. That's because of the conflicts in Hong Kong, because one country, two systems is dead, according to them. And the government is telling lies. It is an emotional response. Yes, it is. And yet you continue to oppress them with even heavier, a more heavy-handed approach with a national security law, for example. Will we be able to give joy to the next generation? It is meaningless to use guns and force to earn respect. You need to earn respect by other ways, not to oppress them, not to use police batons and put them behind bars. We asked the then Secretary for Constitution and Mainland Affairs, Mr. Patric, when we scrutinized the National Anthem Bill, we asked under what circumstances would it constitute disrespect for the country. We asked about the number of songs sung by Hacken Lee and other pop singers because we wanted to clear the gray areas. And according to Mr. Nip, he said that the song The Football Chronicles and the All Day Love would not have any problem. And it would be very difficult for the threshold to be met. And with these words, Mr. Patric Nip already got sacked, and we now have Eric Zhang as the secretary. Even the rule of law is at stake. In fact, I just received news that no foreign judges can preside and over cases or sentence cases relating to the national security laws. For the Court of Final Appeal, we have 15 expatriate judges. They're invited to become CFA, non-permanent judges, because of their status in the common law legal system in other jurisdictions, not because of what they think. Why would you think that a foreign judge will not be able to uphold justice? Are there problems with the judges, or is there a problem with the government? It is causing a lot of panic because this is adopted and included in Annex 3 of the Basic Law. We are debating on a National Anthem Bill, but how about we just drive all foreigners away and only people with Chinese nationality can take up this job? It's a sign of weakness, isn't it? Because otherwise, if you're strong enough, you will be impartial. Because judges will do their work in accordance with the law, regardless of their nationality. Why is it that they're showing signs of weakness? Why are we going down this path? Why are we proposing heavy punishments? Well, for the March of the Volunteers, remember how the songwriter Tian Han died? People thought that this song was written in 1944 for the establishment of the PRC. That's not true. Tian Han died in 1968 because of persecution in the Cultural Revolution. He died drinking his own urine. And it wasn't after he had died that the March of the Volunteers became the national anthem. So the oppression is real. We understand from the March of the Volunteers how political oppression is done. It's a sign of weakness. I'm just disheartened because our country is using heavy punishments to earn respect.
Mr. Lam Chak-ting. President, the National Anthem Bill is now in its final legislative stage. When it comes to the National Anthem Bill, well, if you look at the Preamble, point 3 says this. The ordinance is to be enacted to preserve the dignity of the national anthem, to regulate the playing and singing, the broadcast and the use of the national anthem, to enhance citizens' awareness of the People's Republic of China, and to promote patriotism. President, I'd like to specifically talk about patriotism. All right, our national anthem is the March of the Volunteers. It's a very famous war song during the anti-Japanese war. All right, I studied history, and in particular World War II. And in the Chinese war song, the anti-Japanese resistance war, I studied very hard. I studied in depth. It's not about the Hong Kong Protection War and also the Pacific War. And actually, from the September 18th incident all the way up to the end of the Second World War. So I studied every detail of those wars. As a result, concerning the sufferings of the Chinese race from my very young age, from the bottom of my heart, I remember all the incidents. I could still remember the Nanjing massacre, and there was a scene when the Japanese troops took the heads of the Chinese people who had been massacred already. So that several heads were held in their hands and they took pictures, let alone the Chinese women who had been massacred and brutally harmed by the Japanese troops. That's why to the Chinese army, I had great respect for them, in particular for those commanders and so on who had sacrificed their lives for the war. I had the highest respect for them. In fact, if you look at the entire Second World War, well, for the one who sacrificed his life, the top commander was Commander Zhang Zhizhong. He sacrificed his life for the war. But President, what I'd like to say to the to our counterparts on the mainland and also the Central People's Government, for those who describe us as people who safeguard the Chinese race, in fact, for the younger generation, they simply would not embrace this thought. Why is that the case? I think there are two reasons. First, the Chinese Communist Party, when it comes to patriotism and also the concept of loving the party, I think the two have been mixed. So when you love the country, it means that you have to love the party. And if you do not love the party, then it means that you're not patriotic. Secondly, the Central People's Government, that is the CCP, well, they are trying to suppress Hong Kong, and the kind of force in suppressing Hong Kong has become heavier and heavier. That's why the awareness of the younger generation in going against this would become stronger and stronger. And when they try to instill the so-called patriotic education and the spirit of patriotism in the younger minds would become even harder. That's why in legislating the national anthem law, you say that you try to increase citizens' awareness and promote patriotism. I don't think you should do it by way of legislation. How can you legislate on how people should love? Well, if you love a school, whether you love it or like it or not, is your personal sentiment. But then you cannot just have a rule or regulation in the school saying that you will have to love your school. Yes, you can enact legislation saying that you cannot insult the logo of the school. I can understand it. But then if you legislate to force people to love a country, that's not possible. Well, from a very young age, I've been studying so much about the resistance war. That's why when it comes to the Chinese Communist Party, all right, coming back to the 7-to-1 direction, that is 70% development and 20% to cope with the situation, and then 1 or 10% would be for the development of the country. I would find it hard to accept, because when Chairman Mao received overseas visitors, in particular the Japanese visitors, he thanked the Japanese government for giving room to breathe for the Chinese Communist Party. I find it hard to accept. Now, coming back to the National Anthem Bill, it says that you will have to promote patriotism, but then we will have to look at the FNEO, all right? When it was introduced in Hong Kong, it was also a national law. But then there was no mention of promoting patriotism. It was not written into the NFNEO. The way it is now enacted into the present bill, I think they also understand that for Hong Kong people now, with regard to the entire regime and even the entire race, they are feeling more and more alienated, and they are feeling more detached from the government and also from the power. Well, you might think that if we can write it in, will we be able to promote it and enhance it? Well, as I said, loving the country and loving the party have been mixed. And it's hard to convince Hong Kong people, in particular the younger generation, to accept it. All right, you might say that we are just talking about loving the country. So what has the administration said about this? Well, in paragraph 15 of the Bills Committee's report, they said that the government does not agree that the way it is drafted now, the preamble would have any further expression on ideology. Well, with regard to the political language of China and even the CPP, I think it represents a misunderstanding. In fact, by patriotic education, what kind of concept is that? In November last year, the central authorities of the PRC published a guideline or an outline on patriotic education. What does it say? It says that with the coming of the new age, patriotic education is something that, the CCP is the biggest promoter of patriotism and also the administrator of this or the executor of this, and therefore it will be leading all the races in order to be involved in this revolution and also to realize this spirit of patriotism. Will be writing a great chapter on this, and therefore since the 18th Party Congress, as with Xi Jinping as the core of this idea, so we will have to consolidate our strengths so that we'll be able to take a series of measures and put in place plans in order to develop this so that we'll be able to realize this concept. And it insists that by promoting patriotism and also loving the country and also socialism, and everything will come together. And therefore, the destiny of socialism and also our party cannot be separated. And therefore, the nature of this is that we will have to insist on loving the party, the country, and also socialism, so that there would be a high level of unitedness. In fact, the party and the country cannot be separated. So loving the party means loving the country. And what it says after that was that you will have to seriously and consistently realize or implement this so that we will enrich our knowledge about the country. And then we will also have to ensure that the etiquette of when the national anthem is played and sung and so on, you will have to, at public occasions and also certain ceremonies and so on, and in the oath-taking ceremony and so on, you will also have to ensure that this is properly done. So as you can see, the CPP has this concept of loving the country and loving the party, and they have systematically mixed up the two. And that would only serve to make it more difficult to accept by the Hong Kong people. Because to us, our country means our earth, our culture, our race, with a long history. So it's everything coming together. So we have our own culture. But then for the political power, they are just the power in place to rule the country. All right, the political party can change, but then the country goes on. But then if you say that loving the country means loving the party, how can that be acceptable? So if you look at the current National Anthem Bill, it makes it clear. Under 7.6, it says that for any contravention of the provisions, it would be an offense, and the maximum penalty would be a fine at level 5 and also an imprisonment term for 3 years. In fact, we have compared the fine in different jurisdictions. As some colleagues have said, in some places there is no penalty at all, and in other places there are. For example, taking Singapore as an example, there is no imprisonment term. Even if you insult the national anthem, there'll be a fine of $1,000. And for the jurisdiction with the heaviest penalty, okay, the research unit has done this. All right, in Germany, the fine or the penalty would be the heaviest. But then in most countries, there is no penalty at all, or the penalty would not be as heavy as what we have here. President, in summary, if you want Hong Kong people to love our country and love our race, you should not rely on heavy penalties and draconian laws or playing and singing the national anthem day in, day out in order to promote patriotism. Just look back on a decade ago when we saw the national team getting very good results at the Olympics Games. Hong Kong people welcomed them here. In fact, many people were very happy about that. And even earlier, so when there was this flooding incident in the southern part of China, well, everybody tried to chip in. They donated money. And then when we had the June 4th massacre, well, people in Hong Kong couldn't sleep. And for months, they tried to support the patriotic movement and pro-democracy movement in Beijing. So this is patriotism on the part of Hong Kong people. How come by now this kind of spirit is phasing out, in particular for the younger people in Hong Kong, when it comes to major incidents of our country? They simply cannot feel attached to it. So it's not about loving or hating it. They just think that they have nothing to do with this. So this is the result. This is the doing of the political power. Is not that we have instilled the wrong knowledge in them, as suggested by the Bureau Director. So you will have to look at the situation realistically. What kind of suppression are we suffering? And if this continues, and the fact that they are living in Hong Kong, well, what should they do? Should they become obedient citizens, or should they just continue with the resistance? So you will have to understand the reality. So the national anthem law is there to instill the ideology of the CPP. So it's a patriotic education, and you're trying to force it through the minds of Hong Kong people. And I think it's going to be counterproductive, and it's going to backfire. And I don't think you'll be able to get the result that you want. On the contrary, there'll be more resistance on the part of the public.
I will leave it to my fellow colleagues to express the stance of the Democratic Party. We cannot support this bill. Mr. Ray Chan. Just like a lot of Hong Kong people, I oppose to this national anthem bill. But there are 2 points that I'd like to state clearly first. First, under Article 18, national legislation are set out in Annex 3. They are to be promulgated or legislated by the Hong Kong SAR. Well, previously, the national law has been listed in Annex 3. That's why the national anthem law will be promulgated by the region. They said that if the bill cannot pass, that it will not start from the beginning. It will simply be promulgated as the national anthem law. I can tell you that this one will not die. Last time, we ground copyright bill to a halt because there was no framework set down for the committee's stage amendment. However, it's because it was at the end of the term, there was not enough time. Now, the President, Mr. Leung, has announced a time limit of 30 hours. When the time's up, it has to be put to the vote. So surely you will be able to enact this bill. Don't blame it on the failure to return a chairperson in the House Committee, because this bill did not go to the House Committee. You said that as long as a letter is sent to Starry Lee, it conforms with the procedure. Don't blame the House Committee. You have the majority. As long as you're there to vote on it, it will be passed. Andrew Leung, the President, set a time limit. They have mobilized at least 3,000 police officers in Admiralty. Today in Central and Admiralty, it's under a state of curfew. They have even fired a shot and used pepper spray. Well, you have learned the lesson. You asked people to arrive here overnight. You don't care what happened tomorrow or outside, and you just go through with the procedure and put it to the vote after 30 hours. It's your decision, but don't think you have won. There are people who have sprayed a few words on the wall. You pass the law, we start the war. Well, of course, if you say you start the war with the national security law, you'll be put to prison for the rest of your life. But we are resolved to resist. We are determined to do so.
There is no need for the administration to stand on the opposing side of the people. Some people said that, well, you Democrats vote against it. It's great. What does it mean? This national anthem bill is a different way of expression from the national anthem law in Annex 3. So if you do not vote for it, that means you do not uphold the basic law, then we can disqualify you. Even if we don't this term, next time you won't be able to stand in the election. I want some clarification. Is it the case that the Let's Go only needs to serve as a rubber band? We only have to endorse all the bills introduced by the administration. Well, we try to make it better. I have submitted 20 amendments with only 16 approved. I will explain in detail in the committee stage. But from the perspective of the Liaison Office and the Hong Kong Macau Office, well, regarding the anti-epidemic fund, there are some members who wrote an article criticizing Democrats for not voting for it. I have prepared for the worst. There are some pro-establishment camp reminding me in a supposedly friendly way that when you speak, don't go too far, because it may affect your political career. Well, thank you very much. What political career or future do we have? Every time I stand here to speak, I speak as if it's my last time. I answer to my conscience. I don't care about personal benefits or glory. I'm here to speak my mind and speak from my heart. Whether it is Patric Nip or the new secretary, Mr. Zhang, if you want to achieve the objective, that is to promote the spirit of patriotism and to protect and promote the national anthem, I can tell you that it will definitely backfire. I share the feelings of Mr. Lam Cheuk Ting. Back in the 1980s, I remember it was the Los Angeles Olympic Games. I was moved with because of the participation of a mother country. I was moved to tears, but it was only like 10 or 20 years. I have lost the feeling completely. I do think that the Central Authority of Beijing will have to carefully reflect on this. The problem of this bill is that it would second-guess your motive. From administration's reply, you know how serious the problem is. In one of the meetings, I asked the administration, if someone appeals to members of the public to not attend an occasion where the national anthem is played, Martin Liu, the chairperson, said, well, under the common law, it's not unlawful to ask someone not to do something. But what did the administration said? They said that, well, if you incite someone to disrespect or insult the national anthem, then it is against the law. You can see that the administration did not answer clearly. He did not say as clearly as Martin Liu. He said that if you ask someone not to attend, and if it can be shown that the intent is to insult the national anthem, or if it's proof that your appeal is an insult to the national anthem, then you have broken the law. We've asked many questions, but we haven't got any answers. In relation to number 5, well, occasions on which a national anthem must be played is set out in Schedule 3. According to Schedule 3, well, there are the oath-taking ceremonies. There are many of them. If I do not open my mouth to sing the national anthem, of course, it is not criminal because Clause 5 is not a criminal offense, but it will affect the validity of the oath-taking occasion if a legislator does not sing the national anthem during an oath-taking ceremony, as it is set out in Schedule 3, I'd like the administration to say whether it is still a valid ceremony or not. Under Clause 5, it also says that, if anyone insults the national anthem, it is against the law. It says in any other way. Of course, it covers asking someone not to attend or not to sing. Netizens said that this is an atrocious national anthem bill. They have used many derogatory terms to describe this bill. If someone, after the passage of the bill, continued to call this by the same name, that it is an anthem of thieves, would that constitute an insult? Would they be arrested by the police? Would it be a criminal offense? And if you sing very loudly in a park the national anthem to disturb other people, and these people boo that person, would it become booing the national anthem? Would you arrest the people who resisted the disturbance caused by the people who sang the national anthem? As you know, that this is we already have a very narrowly scoped provision, the prohibition of group gathering. When it goes to the hands of the police, is implemented in a mess. A lot of people have been slapped with the fixed penalty. Well, even if you're alone, you will be alleged to have contravened the prohibition. When it comes to this national anthem bill, how will it be enforced? Say, for example, in a football match, members of the public are welcome. They would wear masks, and if they boo the national anthem, how can the police officers tell? Is it the case that they are going to just close the venue and then check all the participants' social media to see if they've said anything? As you can see, that the time bar for this is really long. Unlike other offences, it's as long as 2 years. And the Commission for Police, at the start of the investigation, has 1 year. Does it take as long as 2 years to investigate? What does that mean? It means, with abundance in time to collect evidence, they would be able to look a very long way back in your history. With this bill, after third reading and passed, police officers will have a very long time to dig up anything that's against you. As you can tell, from the extension of that time bar, it's not as simple as asking you to respect the national anthem. Patric said very honestly that in relation to these things as to promote patriotism, it's not as simple as that. You have blown up the power disproportionately. As a result, the Department of Justice can prosecute you as they want. Police officers can arrest you as they want, and they have 2 years to collect evidence. What's more scary is that this bill will enable the administration to, without consultation and by way of negative vetting, add to the occasions on which national anthem is played and to delete these occasions. These provisions will have far-reaching implications. So whether it's local legislation or promulgation by the NPCSC, they can change it however they want. That's why I moved a lot of amendments to impose restrictions on the power of the chief executive, so that the power will be restricted. Say, for example, religious activities will not be incorporated in Schedule 3. I think it won't take long for these public order events to be listed in Schedule 3, where the national anthem will be played. The power given to the chief executive is so wide that she can do anything she wants. We understand that they will not just stop with the passage of the bill. There will be a litany of similar offences, say, for example, insult of police officers, insult of the liaison office. There will be more. Of course, you can say that this national anthem bill will cover everything, or the national security law. Lastly, I'd like to say that you use criminal offense to coerce people to love your country is wrong. Those who are in power should respect these people. The country should love its people before the sentiment is returned. An authoritarian rule is in no position to make people to respect the national anthem because they will be abandoned by its people and they will have to face their music.
Dr. Fernando Chang. President, I speak to oppose the resumption of the second reading debate on the National Anthem Bill. President, on your treatment on the point of order earlier today, I certainly disagree, and I'd like to go on record for that. You made a ruling. A member moved a motion to adjourn under Rule 16(2), and the ruling was on whether this is a matter of urgency or public importance. You should not stop the possibility of moving such motion. This could be a catastrophic law for Hong Kong, and we cannot even have a debate. The time for debate would be limited. I made my ruling. The decision of the President shall be final and shall not be debated at the Council. I'm just voicing my view. Please respect the President's decision. I have no other choice. Given the imbalance of powers, you could make your ruling and I can voice my views. The national anthem law has caused a lot of controversy. This could have been avoidable under normal circumstances, but the circumstances we are facing are certainly not normal, and this is shown by the President who just stepped out of his seat. The law was imposed upon by the central government. It attracted much international interest, but at the Legislature of Hong Kong, we were not consulted, and we are not even allowed to have a debate or discussion. We are simply conveying the views of the public. Tomorrow, the MPCSC would be authorized to draft the bill, and it will be passed very soon, and by that time, we won't even have the freedom to speak. The national anthem law is certainly a malicious law, and the national security law is 10,000 times worse. I would not talk about the national security law in this session, but the national anthem law is worse enough. And in the preamble, you stated promotion of the love of the nation or patriotism, but when you look at the bill, there was no mentioning at all. Normally, there would not be a preamble to similar laws, and yet you introduce these ideas. You want to preserve the dignity of the national anthem. You want to promote respect towards the national anthem and the nation. which is normal. But yet you are resorting to intimidation, penalties, and fear to promote respect. And these are not the correct ways of gaining respect. You are going to promote the national anthem in primary and secondary schools. You said you would educate on the history and the spirit of the national anthem, but yet in the preamble you wrote about promoting patriotism. What is meant by patriotism? In a democratic country, we would be respecting whatever nation as well as their national flags and national anthem. But the country we are looking at, it is not about the culture, people, environment, or things we cherish of the country. Which country are we talking about? It is the government. And this country, this government, is the result of the one-party rule, in other words, the Communist Party. So patriotism amounts to loving the party. That is the political reality of China. If patriotism amounts to loving the party, then it would be a big problem. You did not allow my amendments. One of my proposed amendments seeks to clarify or indicate the point that patriotism does not amount to loving the party, but under the one-party rule, when you talk about the negative aspects of the Communist Party, whenever you discuss these, then you would be seen as unpatriotic. This is not something Hong Kong people appreciate and accept. In terms of patriot education, Xi Jinping said this is a form of intellectual education. And there are three main themes to patriotic education. One, to maintain the sovereignty and the integrity of the nation, and to uphold ruling by the party. The preamble of the bill talks about patriotic education or patriotic spirit. What is this really about? I suggest the public to look at a video on SCMP.
The saddest ever， 即係有5個理由係中國呢一個國歌咧，係一個最悲慘嘅國歌。
The first point was that in 1935, Tian Han, the composer of the song, what did he write? He was caught by the Kuomintang and he wanted a reform to the society. He wrote the song while in jail. He had to scribble the lyrics on a piece of paper, that is the cigarette pack. After he composed the song, he was drowned swiftly in Japan, and he was only 23 when he died. By 1966, due to the Cultural Revolution, Tian Han was subject to struggles, and he was jailed again, and he died in 1968 in jail. Tian Han's life was highly symbolic. Of course, this part was deleted on the website of the Education Bureau. 80% of the content was gone. For the lyricist and composer, the introductions were very brief. Tian Han was born in 1898, and he returned to China from Japan in 1921. He became an editor of a publisher, and he joined the Communist Party in 1932, and he wrote the lyrics for March of the Volunteers in 1935. He devoted his life to the Communist Party. He hoped to spur new developments for China through his lyrics, and by 1966, he wrote a drama which was considered an anti-party, anti-socialist, and anti-people creation, and he was jailed subsequently. He was subject to many attacks. He was transferred to another prison and subsequently ended in a hospital where he died. He had diabetes. He was forced to drink his own urine, and he was very loyal to the Communist Party. He was a writer, and he was attacked by his very own son. He was fully loyal to the party, but look how he ended up. And in 1976, the CCP continued to attack him. He was labeled as an anti-revolutionary. He was a traitor, and he was disqualified from the party. And the case was only vindicated in 1979. So his story was certainly very symbolic. What is Hong Kong facing now? We are going to pass the national anthem law. But when you think about the history of the national anthem, the rule of the Communist Party that it symbolizes, it is going to destroy our future generation. And they are promoting the so-called patriotism. Patriotism does not mean loving the government or loving Carrie Lam. This does not amount to loving Xi Jinping. This is not a Mao Zedong philosophy. Patriotism is not achieved by imposing punishments and sending people to jail. This is not how you promote respect for the country. Recently, a official of the People's Liberation Army was accused, and he was kicked out of the unit. The Chinese Communist Party is doing whatever it can to deprive us of our freedoms, and everyone is forced to follow what they want. When the anthem is played and sung, even those on wheelchairs must stand up, and people who boo the anthem would be jailed for 3 years. In China, a similar offense is only subject to 15 days of jail. In China or on the mainland, the national anthem is not played in international schools. The SCMP interviewed 7 international schools in Beijing. But look at Hong Kong. The national anthem must be sung and played. Everyone must stand solemnly, and any slight sign of disrespect, you could be jailed. This is barbaric. So this is not about gaining respect. Do you call this a civilized society? Is this how we educate our next generation on the motherland? The more forceful you are, you would be achieving the opposite effect. The more vicious you are, the more resistance you will meet. You thought you are the big winners. You are helping those in power jeopardize the rest. Can you explain yourself to your children and future generation? You have made all the mistakes. You are using police batons and excessive force and violence against our young generation. You will face the consequences. If you want to embrace the burn with us mentality, I am sure it will happen one day. But everyone is watching, including the international community. Hong Kong people will not back down. We will stand and fight.
莫乃光議